In our final chapter, we will discuss the application of cross-cultural psychology. We'll explore how human culture interacts with our minds and behaviors, not just in theory, but in the real world, addressing some of the most pressing issues of our time. We'll look at how psychology helps us to navigate the complexities of things like social justice, understand our lives in the digital age, approach conflict and peace between nations, and improve healthcare for diverse populations. Think of this as psychology rolling up its sleeves and getting involved in making a tangible difference. So, to kick things off, let's consider a powerful story that perfectly illustrates why this field matters so much today. Imagine walking across your university campus and seeing a statue honoring someone now viewed as a symbol of oppression and white supremacy. What do you do? Well, this exact scenario unfolded at the University of Cape Town, sparking the Rose Must Fall movement. So we ask, why do symbols from the past ignite such strong reactions today? Well, in March 2015, nearly 10 years ago, a student named Chumi Maxwell took a radical step. He threw human feces at a prominent statue of Cecil Rhodes. But why? What did this poor fella do? Well, to give a little background, Cecil John Rhodes was a powerful British South African figure from the late 19th century, a wealthy, influential businessman in the mining industry. He was a politician and a philanthropist. He served as Prime Minister of the Cape Colony from 1890 to 1896. However, in typical colonizing fashion, he was also an ardent white supremacist who laid the ideological groundwork for the apartheid. During his political career, he was responsible for driving the annexation of a vast territory in South Africa and thus significantly shaping the region's political landscape. Rose is known for founding the modern diamond industry and the company De Beers Consolidated Mines. And though the term blood diamonds didn't gain prominence until the 1990s, Rose mining operations were some of the earlier evidence of these practices involving exploitative labor practices, including forced labor and violence against local populations. His legacy is marked by stark contradictions. While he established the prestigious Rhodes Scholarship, which has benefited many, his actions also contributed to systemic racial oppression and economic exploitation, basically textbook predatory capitalism. Now, Maxwell's Act, followed by the traditional rounds of protests used during the anti-apartheid struggle, ignited a firestorm. Rhodes Must Fall became the rallying cry. Students occupied buildings, demanding the statue's removal, framing it as a fight against institutional racism and the lingering cultural legacy of colonialism. The protest even spread internationally, reaching Oxford University, home of the prestigious Rhodes Scholarship. And this story isn't just about a piece of bronze, it's a powerful illustration of how historical symbols clash with evolving cultural values. One group's hero is another's villain. It forces us to ask, how do we reconcile the past with the present? How do cultural values shape our actions and reactions? And so that real world conflict highlights the very purpose of our discussion, understanding psychology's role in navigating such complex, culturally charged issues. Now, again, psychology as a field aims to describe, predict, and explain, but it truly comes alive when it becomes applied, when its goal shifts to controlling and changing events, hopefully for the better. For decades, cross-cultural psychologists have offered research-based insights to professionals in medicine, counseling, education, business, and more. But recently, there's been a powerful surge towards addressing issues of social justice, diversity, equity, and dignity. And so in this lecture, we'll explore exactly how cross-cultural psychology tackles these real-world challenges based on four key landscapes. The first, the multifaceted world of social justice movements. Second, the undeniable impact of our digital culture. Third, the potent forces of nationalism and the quest for peace. And finally, crucial applications within healthcare. So let's dive into our first major theme, the pursuit of social justice through the lens of cross-cultural psychology. So what do we truly mean by social justice? Well, at its heart, it's about fairness, ensuring everyone in society gets a fair shake regarding resources, opportunities, and even outcomes. In psychology today, this increasingly means focusing on groups who've historically been pushed to the margins, oppressed, exploited, or minority populations. There's an ongoing debate about whether the focus should be solely on equality of opportunity or also encompass equality of outcome. Regardless, psychologists play a vital role in three interconnected areas. First, fighting discrimination, not just overt bias, but also subtle stereotypes, even those applied to groups perceived as successful, like the model minority myth surrounding Asian Americans, which mask ongoing prejudice. Second, actively promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. Think developing multilingual psychological services for immigrants or advocating for diverse college admissions. And third, fostering individual responsibility and altruism, encouraging people to help those in need and improve access to essentials like education and healthcare. Perhaps one of the most charged and complex areas within social justice discourse today revolves around race. When discussing race, critical race theory or CRT offers a crucial lens. Originating in legal studies in the 1970s, CRT posits that racism isn't just about individual bad actors. It's woven into the very fabric of our institutions, that it's systemic. It argues race is a social invention, not a biological reality, and that addressing racial inequity requires deep structural changes across society. And so key concepts emerge from this framework. One is that white privilege refers to the often unearned advantages white individuals might have simply due to their race in an unequal system. Intersectionality highlights that race doesn't exist in isolation. It combines with other factors like gender, class, and various other identities to shape experiences of power and disadvantage. And the term woke, originally from the 1930s, signifies being actively aware of these social justice issues. A conscious, powerfully embodied by the Black Lives Matter movement, which surged internationally after George Floyd's murder, demanding an end to police brutality and systemic racism. But a word of caution, while advocating for justice is vital, psychologists must avoid mere virtue signaling, which is making public declarations just to look good without genuine commitment. And those frameworks often fuel debates centered on group identity and the interpretation of history, leading us into the concepts of identity politics and the controversial cancel culture. Now, identity politics emerged when people organized politically based on shared experiences of oppression tied to the group identity, be it race, gender, religion, or something else. And this focus on group identity drives specific political agendas. Often intertwined with this is the phenomenon dubbed cancel culture. Think of it as a modern form of public shaming or ostracism, targeting those perceived to have acted offensively. The targets can fall into several categories. Individuals such as celebrities, including comedians like Dave Chappelle, politicians and historical figures like Thomas Jefferson, and authors such as J.K. Rowling. Now, it's not limited to people. Sometimes brands or products face cancellation attempts as well. For instance, the former branding of Uncle Ben's rice and Aunt Jemima's syrup is an example. And this frequently involves historical revisionism, actively reevaluating the past, questioning old narratives, and challenging traditional moral judgments. We see this in the passionate debates and actions around things like removing Confederate monuments in the US, the toppling of Lenin statues in post Soviet Russia, or even attempts to fundamentally shift historical starting points, like the 1619 Project, suggesting America's true origin lies with the arrival of enslaved Africans, not the 1776 Declaration. And the key is fostering inclusiveness, respecting that different groups may have vastly different interpretations of history based on their identities, while still grounding discussions in verifiable historical facts. And moving from broad historical narratives, let's focus on a specific and crucial area of social justice, the fight for women's rights. So, the struggle against sexism, prejudice based on sexual gender, is obviously central to social justice. It often based on the harmful belief that one sex is superior and manifests in various ways, from open hostility, such that women are illogical, to more subtle forms, sometimes called benevolent sexism, where women are weaker and need men's protection. A pivotal moment in challenging sexism was the Me Too movement, sparked by revelations of misconduct by powerful figures like Harvey Weinstein. Millions used the hashtag to share their experiences, creating a global wave of awareness about sexual harassment and assault, marking a real cultural shift. Another deeply contentious and polarizing global issue is reproductive rights, specifically abortion. Is it a fundamental human right, essential for bodily autonomy, or is the wrongful termination of human life? Now, those that are pro choice believe reproductive rights are individual. Human rights access must be safe and legal. Denying access forces unsafe abortions. Pro life advocates argue that abortion is the deliberate destruction of embryos or fetuses, and that is morally wrong. Basically, they're saying it's akin to killing a person. Many actually hold middle ground views, though, supporting legality up to fetal viability with exceptions. And views are heavily shaped by cultural and religious traditions. For instance, the Islamic perspectives allow early term abortion before ensoulment, which is at 120 days or approximately 4 months, while the Catholic Church's historical stance argues life begins at conception. Now, gender stereotypes, those that are ingrained assumptions about men and women, can have surprising and even dangerous consequences. So take a few minutes and look at this clip that highlights the study on hurricane names and how it highlights gender stereotypes. Now, as you just witnessed in the previous video, researchers found storms given female names were associated with higher death tolls. But why? How could that even be? Well, people subconsciously perceive these storms as less threatening due to what? Gender stereotypes, leading to less preparation. Seems pretty preventable, huh? Well, debates on gender stereotypes are often fueled by deeply ingrained societal beliefs about gender. So, how can we actively work to dismantle harmful gender stereotypes? What strategies can be implemented to overcome such biases? First, cultivate awareness. A rose by any other name would call this wokeness. Pay attention to your own assumptions and how they might color your judgment. Second, when you see differences, maybe white girls often get better grades or more men are in engineering, look for multiple causes. Don't jump to stereotypical conclusions. Third, cultivate new, accurate perceptions. Don't just stop at women are bad at science, right? Actually seek out facts like knowing women earn over half the doctorates in the field, like molecular biology and neuroscience in North America, even if fewer are actually in physics. Now, our understanding of gender and identity has expanded significantly, leading us to the important areas of LGBTQ plus rights and the psychological challenges faced by this community. And so the umbrella term of LGBTQ plus encompasses a diverse range of identities beyond heterosexual and cisgender norms. So psychology within this field is dedicated to understanding and supporting these individuals. It's crucial because many face significant challenges, particularly transgender people. The statistics are deeply concerning. Studies reveal that staggering percentages of transgender youth, around 40, 50, and even 56% in some surveys, have contemplated suicide. They also face much higher risk for things like depression and anxiety. A major contributing factor is homophobia, a systemic aversion or prejudice against LGBTQ plus individuals. It's often fueled by stereotypes and irrational fear of difference. Sadly, in some countries like Russia or Iran, homophobia isn't just social, it's enshrined in law, making life incredibly dangerous for individuals and their allies. And prejudice, unfortunately, doesn't stop there. Let's turn our attention to discrimination based on age and disability. Now, ageism is another form of prejudice targeting people simply because of their age, whether they're deemed too old or too young. Think about mandatory retirement laws still existing in countries like Brazil and Israel, forcing people out of jobs based on a number, not ability. And this perpetuates biased assumptions. This practice is generally unlawful in the US with exceptions. Alongside ageism, we must address discrimination against people with disabilities. There's a welcome shift towards more inclusive language, like persons with diverse needs and abilities. And psychology advocates for their full inclusion in all areas of life. A key role for psychologists is promoting awareness of and fighting the negative stereotypes and prejudice often faced by people with disabilities, including psychological conditions like autism spectrum disorder, amongst others. And it's important to remember that what one culture considers normal, another might see totally different. And this brings us to the critical intersection of human rights and the planet that we share, environmental justice. And this topic insists that a clean, safe environment is a right for everyone, not a privilege for a few, because it demands fair treatment for all communities, regardless of race or income, in environmental decision making and protection from hazards. So, the environmental justice movement began in the 1960s, influenced by the American Civil Rights Movement and growing environmental awareness. It focused on addressing environmental racism, where marginalized communities disproportionately faced environmental hazards. Key figures like Robert Bullard and grassroots activism played pivotal roles in highlighting these injustices, leading to significant legislative and policy changes that continue to evolve today. You might ask, what can psychologists do? We don't build seawalls or clean rivers, but we can engage in educated action. By using our research, voices, and platforms, we can inform the public and influence policy. Psychologists can conduct studies that reveal the psychological impacts of environmental degradation and advocate for policies that address these issues. We also like the plight of the world's poorest, over 600 million people living on less than $2.15 a day, often in areas most vulnerable to floods or droughts. And so, by bringing attention to these communities, psychologists can advocate for international aid and sustainable development projects that improve living conditions and resilience against environmental disasters. We can promote green values, which is encouraging sustainable practices like recycling and conservation, even when unsustainable choices seem easier. And so psychologists can develop educational programs and campaigns that emphasize the long-term benefits of sustainable practices and motivate individuals and communities to adopt greener lifestyles. We can foster a common environmental identity that unites us across borders. By emphasizing shared environmental concerns, psychologists can help build a global sense of responsibility and cooperation, encouraging collective action to address climate change and environmental degradation. And critically, we can use our understanding of persuasion to combat things like greenwashing, when companies pretend to be more eco friendly than they really are. Psychologists can analyze and expose deceptive marketing practices, educate consumers on how to identify genuine sustainable products, and advocate for stricter regulations on environmental claims made by companies. And so that brings us to the end of our exploration of social justice. So let's pause to summarize the key takeaways. We've explored social justice applications and cross-cultural psychology concerning the complexities of race, examining systemic issues through the lens of CRT. We've discussed the ongoing fight against sexism and the critical debates around reproductive rights. We've also highlighted the challenges and rights of the LGBTQ plus community, as well as those facing ageism and disability discrimination. And finally, we underscore the importance of environmental justice for all. And so, what's the unifying thread? Well, cross cultural psychology is not a passive observer. It actively engages in understanding and dismantling discrimination, promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion, advocating for marginalized groups, and ultimately striving for a more just and equitable world through culturally informed action and research. And be sure to check in back to section 2 as we'll discuss another domain that profoundly shapes modern life, the pervasive world of digital culture.